So good evening to all of you. We are moving to the second session where we are having the invited talks. The topic is science in the public domain. Dr. Vikas Sinha is with us to deliver the talk. I would like to give a brief introduction about Dr. Vikas Sinha. Dr. Vikas Sinha was born in 1945. He is the first-class science graduate from the University of Calcutta. He obtained his tripos from the Cambridge University in Natural Science in 1967 and obtained his PhD from London University in 1970 and DSc in 1981. Dr. Sinha has lived almost 12 years teaching and researching in Rutherford High Energy Physics Laboratory and King's College, London. Internationally known, he has traveled extensively and known to most of the peers of physics for Europe, USA, former USSR, and Japan. He has published more than 250 papers, mind-boggling, 250 papers. He has published more than 250 papers. The pioneering work on gluon plasma is already well recognized internationally. He led the team from inside India to participate in the experiments at CERN, very famous experiment, CERN, Geneva, as well as RHIC and BNL in USA. A first of its kind from India, he, along with his colleagues, established the thermometric signals of quark gluon plasma as a definitive signals. Already confirmed by experiments, recently his breakthrough work on Hawking radiation and entropy from the relic of QCD, phase of transition at the primordial epoch of few microseconds after the Big Bang, and its signature in the universe has made a tremendous impact. Dr. Sinha joined BARC, Baba Atomic Research Center, in 1976 after coming back from England and was appointed Director of Variable Energy Cyclotron Center in 1987. He is a fellow of the prestigious Indian National Science Academy, INSA, as recognition of his outstanding research in physics. He is also a fellow of National Academy of Sciences, Allahabad. Dr. Sinha held the concurrent charge as director of Saha Institute of Nuclear Physics, Kolkata, from November 1992 to June 2009. Dr. Sinha is a recipient of S.N. Bose Birth Centenary Award of Indian Science Congress Association 1994. Dr. Sinha has been confirmed Padma Shri Award by the Government of India in 2001 for his significant contribution in science and technology. He has got fellowship in prestigious international institutions and recipient of various awards, also acted as distinguished visiting scholar of Cambridge. Professor Sinha has been confirmed the prestigious Padma Bhushan Award by the Government of India in 2010 for his significant contribution in science and technology. Professor Sinha has become a member of State Planning Board, Government of West Bengal, since September 2011. He has been the holder of Distinguished Homi Bhabha Chair of DAE from 2009 to 2014. He has been the holder of Distinguished Honorary Scientist position of Indian National Science Academy from 2015 to 2019. Professor Sinha has been the chairman of Bose Institute of Council since September 2013 to August 2018. Now, Professor Sinha is Indian National Science Academy Senior Scientist. I welcome you, sir, on behalf of National Council of Science Museums and NCSE. The floor is yours, sir. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Should I start?
Yes, sir.
Is Dr. Ghosh there or not?
Yes, just there.
Ghosh is gone, right?
Yes, just
He's
there.
not coming back?
No, just he has gone, sir. Just now.
He has to take some medicines. So he has to take some medicine, so he has rushed back home.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Well, since you're out of time, I will be somewhat briefer than what I thought.
Okay.
But anyway, it's a great honor and privilege to be part of a very well-known team, Dr. Ghosh and his colleagues and my friends to say a few words about Dr. Ghosh and then go on to my main theme of science in the public domain. I hope you can hear me. You can hear me? Hello? Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. If you're audible, sir.
I still recall as a school kid how terribly excited I was going to Birla Industrial and Technological Museum in Calcutta. Dr. Ghosh pioneered the Science Museum movement almost single-handed. But the museum was not a museum of industrial technology. In fact, it was not a museum at all with museum pieces. It's a beautiful and unique museum capturing the intrinsic beauty of science, lively and exciting. 1905, Einstein discovered photoelectric equation along with special theory of relativity and Brownian motion. Discovery of photoelectric equation got him the Nobel Prize. On paper, photoelectric effect is quite easy to understand. Propagation of light by photons of so-called light particles with massless billiard balls. But it's very difficult to be understanding photoelectric effect in reality. Dr. Sharad Ghosh did that back in 1950s in BITM, as he was explaining. Now we take it for granted, as was mentioned by Dr. Ghosh, photoelectric effect. And in a way, the opening of door or closing the door by photoelectric effect made a great impression to a young fellow like me, who's still in school. And that had lot to do by taking a decision to go to physics. Dr. B.C. Roy, the first Chief Minister of Bengal, of independent India, took a personal interest, and I was rather fond of the young man, Sharad Ghosh. Then, of course, I went abroad for a long time, many places in the world, particularly Europe. I lost touch. When I came back, there was already two gigantic fundamental contributions of Dr. Ghosh. One was the National Council of Science Museum, the second, the Mobile Science Exhibition. The idea of Mobile Science Exhibition is very interesting. It was taken to the children to understand science and comprehend science. Very soon, it was almost a contagious disease, this whole science movement. It's a massive movement. Just imagine 48 mobile science exhibitions, 18 science centers, 2 national level, 7 regional level, and district level. Even the die-hard politicians got the flavor of science museum as a popular movement, possibly to catch votes, and they hang on to Sharad Ghosh with the brand of bandwagon. Nehru Science Center came out of Worli, which I recall was a garbage ground of Mumbai, and Kolkata Science City, built on the heart of garbage dump of Calcutta, for its unbearably scandalous stink, now gone. There is nothing of the kind, but it's a miracle. Apart from signal contribution to science popularization, Dr. Ghosh also contributed in no small way to a massive environmental movement. And mind you, to talk about climate change, environment was not that fashionable at that time. She's truly laudable. National Science Museum came forward. That was actually quite a remarkable breakthrough. And personally, I got very fascinated with Foucault's pendulum. And while building the auditorium in Saha Institute, I took help of my friends in National NCSM and built a Foucault's pendulum in the beginning of the auditorium. Foucault's pendulum is a marvelous object It doesn't need electricity to run particularly, and it's a wonderful institution for the children to find out. Of course, Dr. Ghosh's greatest star contribution is the mega traveling exhibition for India Heritage of Science was taken. And he actually managed to make the world aware in a small way, however, cutting through the colonial prism of looking at India as a backward nation of only superstitions, ignorance, and starving millions. A new light was thrown world over by Dr. Ghosh. The ancient India became very vivid, rich variety of a cultural and scientific heritage, the Upanishad, the Vedanta, along with great advances made in astronomy, trigonometry, and arithmetic. And I might like to add, this was long before Aristotle and Galileo. Great mathematicians, the Aryabhata, Brahmagupta, hibernating under the heat of long forgotten history, came alive suddenly. Dr. Ghosh revived them indirectly. Amusingly enough, one common streak between those mathematicians 2000 years ago and now is that they still agree to disagree. There is a sub-country, I don't want to wish to go into details now, consisting of Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal, and so on and so forth. And there has been a talk and discussion intensely about India taking a lead in science and popularization of science, science museum in particular, to bring forward the so-called backward attitude of some of these countries nearby. Now I come briefly to science in the public domain. What I have said so far is to emphasize what a total committed person can do to bring science into the public domain, which is huge intellectual energy and passion. But what about the inhabitants of the public domain? What about the burning enthusiasm of the young? Why has it disappeared in vicious cycle of struggle for survival? As one grows from boyhood to youth, what chemistry have we played and done to them to obliterate that useful enthusiasm? Ideology cannot be just an ingredient for political wisdom. There can be and must be an ideology of science, of rational thinking, a sense of scientific positivism. From the diabolical darkness of ignorance to lift us from the stupor of the opium of religion, from the catastrophe of arrogant dogma, brought out from the coffins of archaic stigma buried long ago. Instead, why can't we have a breathless, fresh realism of science, where there is no mystery, no hidden agenda, but surrounded by overwhelming beauty of science as our new religion? Why not? Einstein certainly heard that. Heisenberg was overwhelmed by it. Why can be more serenely beautiful? What can be more serenely beautiful than the hiss of expanding universe, carrying the primordial message of the Big Bang, of the very creation of the universe? Now the process of dehumanization started in the world, and you are just idle visitor to that, idle worshipper. Scientific gadgets, artificial intelligence, computer control, quantum computing. India has been a slave of scientific gadgets. The irony is we go to space to watch the stars in the still darkness of an empty space. Yet we are humans very close to our country, behaving like savages of Middle Ages and murder even innocent children. My immeasurable anxiety is this enormous gap, a huge gap of intellectual wilderness, much worse and much more dangerous than the wide open outer space of dark and awful still beauty. The vigorous campaign for science, the rationalism of science can go a long way, and I appeal to Science Museum friends and Dr. Ghosh in particular. I would like to end soon just to say one thing, that even old Rabindranath Tagore, the great poet of India, in Bengal in particular, heard the calling of science at the ripe old age of 78, 4 years before his death. Having met Einstein, Heisenberg, and our own Bose, he wrote that magnificent book called Bishop Richard. And I'm sorry to say I failed to make it a textbook of our school. So, I think if you cherish Dr. Ghosh's life, great inspiration from it. And the last message I have to leave for Dr. Ghosh is quoting the American poet Dr. Robert Frost. Dr. Ghosh is young, about 85 in mind and probably body, still young. The quotation goes as follows: the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.
So thank you, Bivasana sir. Thank you so much for your brief and nice talk. And unfortunately, Dr. Ghosh has gone because of some medical problem. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir, for taking your time from your busy schedule and being with us here today. Thank you so much. You can.
We had some time. Okay. Now,
Okay, Shichi.
yeah, I think we will go to the next session in just few minutes because we are trying to connect with Dr. John Falk if he's there. Dr. Yeah. Okay. Okay. In the meantime, I think we have some time because it's a very early morning, around 4:30 a.m. in. Yeah, it's around 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, around 6 o'clock in US. So we'll just try to play just a recorded message from our colleague, former colleague from NCSM and former Deputy Director General Dr. J. Thanapathy, who has sent a recorded message. Yeah, Mr. Gautam. Yes.
Respected Dr. Sharaj Ghosh, Sri Shamad Bagchi, my seniors in NCSM, distinguished guests, esteemed audience on site and online. I began my service career in BITM as an entry-level curator in 1978, a few months after the formation of NCSM. I had served the council for 33 years and had the golden opportunity to work directly under the guidance of Dr. Saroj Ghosh for the first 10 years. During the following 10 years, I had 3 different bosses, but I was free to seek guidance from Dr. Ghosh. In my opinion, his goal always was science for the millions. Besides all other qualities, Dr. Ghosh was decisive, had an extraordinary ability to foresee the future and anticipate results. There are innumerable instances, but I will narrate my first experience in this direction. Prior to joining NCSM, I was a CSIR Senior Research Fellow at the Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science. My discipline was physics with electronics as a special subject, and I was comfortable designing electronic musical instruments. A few weeks after my appointment, I went to Dr. Saroj Ghosh, the then head of BITM, and told him, "Sir, I intend to develop 2 exhibits for the Popular Science Gallery on the theme of physics of music." He bluntly said no. He said, "Our current interest is in subjects like agriculture, food and nutrition, or the like. So think in these terms only." Naturally, I got upset as these were not my cup of tea. But I returned to him after a week with a fresh proposal to develop few electronic game exhibits. He did not discourage this time and said, "Come back with 10 such exhibit ideas after a week. But do not restrict yourself to electronics only. Use electromechanical and mechanical techniques too." I met him again with 10 new ideas. He liked those and said, "Add 5 more ideas." I asked him, "Sir, should I come back again with 15 ideas?" He said, No. 10 is enough for the time being." And immediately he issued an office order on the development of tabletop exhibits in connection with BITM's contribution towards the International Year of the Child in 1979. He involved me as project coordinator and 2 more associates, 1 each from the electronics workshop and the art section for the project. We completed all 15 exhibits in the next 16 months. As I have already said, Dr. Saroj Ghosh was always decisive, had an extraordinary ability to foresee the future and anticipate results. Last year, on the occasion of his 85th birthday celebration, Gautam Sheel and I had written a monograph titled Saroj Ghosh and Museums of Science, Technology and History in India. It was published by NCSM. It is also available online on Google. Thank you.
Guys, just check the participant. Ravi, let's take over.
Professor Falk is already online. You can
Yeah,
start your.
Yeah, we are just starting, sir. Yeah. Good morning, Dr. Falk.
Good morning.
Good morning, US time, and good evening, India time.
Yes.
Yeah. A very good morning to Dr. John Falk. I am Anurag Kumar here, Director Science City, introducing you to the audience. Although I know Dr. John Falk needs no introduction to the August gathering, but even the speakers who need no introduction need introduction to those who are listening to him for the first time. The topic of this international conference is Science Museums and Science Centers movement in India. And the contribution of Dr. Falk is quite significant in this movement. The topic on which Dr. Falk is going to speak today is precisely to tell us about that, his association with science centers in India. I personally had a privilege of attending one of the workshops of Dr. Falk that was organized at National Science Center, Delhi, on the topic free choice learning, which incidentally happens to be the specialization of Dr. Falk. Dr. John Falk, Executive Director, Institute of Learning Innovation, and Sea Grant Professor Emeritus of Oregon State University, is a leading expert on free choice learning. The learning that occurs while visiting science centers, zoos, aquariums, museums, or parks, watching educational television, or surfing the internet for information. His current research focuses on the role that well-being and identity play in why and how people utilize settings such as museums, libraries, zoos, and aquariums, and the value created by that use. He has published more than 250 articles, written 14 books, and received numerous awards, including NARST, the worldwide organization for improving science teaching and learning through research, Council of Scientific Society President's Award for Educational Research, and American Alliance of Museums John Cotton Dane Award for Leadership. His most recent book, due out November 2021, is The Value of Museums Enhancing Societal Well-Being. His favorite free choice learning activities includes tending his Japanese garden, painting, design, swimming, and hiking. I welcome Dr. John Falk and hand over the dais to him for his lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar, for that lovely invitation. And I want to thank the National Council on Science Museums for their kind invitation to me to participate in this meeting. And I particularly want to thank Mr. S. Kumar, Headquarter Director of NCSM, for helping to make this happen. I also want to acknowledge and express my longstanding admiration for Dr. Saroj Ghosh, ex-Director General of the National Council on Science Museums and ex-President of ICOM. It's truly a pleasure to be here today and speak to this group. So I've been asked to speak about my association with science museums in India, which I'm happy to do. It's been a relationship that spans more than 40 years. And over those many years, I have visited India more times than I can count. And as a result of these many visits, India is one of the many handful, or I should say one of the few handful of places in the world where I have collectively spent well over a year of my life. And in addition, I've had the pleasure of hosting numerous Indian science museum professionals in the US. And not surprisingly, as a result of these many longstanding interactions, India, and in particular the science community in India, have a very special place in my heart. My earliest visits to India began in the late 1970s when, with the support from the Indo-US Subcommission, I received the first of several grants to do research on Indian visitors to science museums. Much of my work in those early years centered around school children's visits to the National Museum of Natural History in New Delhi, then under the leadership of Dr. S.M. Nair. But over the years, I got to know not just Dr. Nair, but several subsequent directors of the National Museum of Natural History, including Dr. Saraswat and Venugopal, and more recently, Ms. Naz Rizvi. Also, as a consequence of this early work, I was afforded the opportunity to visit a large number of early science museums in India, including museums in Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Hyderabad, Bangalore, and Mysore. It was in the latter part of that period when I first met Dr. Ghosh, who already was obviously a well-established leader in the field. As my work with science museums expanded, and as I continued my research on informal learning, or as commented, free choice learning, as my colleagues and I prefer to call these types of learning experiences, Dr. Ghosh and my paths intertwined and crossed many times. I always found him highly interested and supportive of my and others' efforts to build a research and evidence foundation for the learning that occurs in science museums. For example, both Dr. Ghosh and I were part of the first Science Center World Congress, which was held in Helsinki, actually Vantaa, Finland, in 1996 at Herika. And of course, Dr. Ghosh and Science City in Calcutta hosted the Second International Science Center Congress in 1999, which I also had the pleasure of participating in. Over the years, this international gathering of science museum professionals, which again, Dr. Ghosh was instrumental in helping to initiate, has become a mainstay and a force for the greater spread of science museums and efforts to popularize science throughout society, particularly in the developing world, a movement which owes a good measure of thanks to the pioneering work of Dr. Ghosh. As at least some of you may know, my efforts in the science museum community have always focused on research and evaluation. And it is in this area that I feel I've been able to make a contribution to the global understanding of the impact that the use of science museums make to the public's understanding of and participation in science. For example, over the years, the research of my colleagues and I have done has provided unequivocal evidence that not only do visitors to science centers and museums demonstrate significant increases in their science knowledge and understanding, significant increases in their science interest and curiosity, and even significant increases in their likelihood of pursuing science careers and pursuits in future years. The results equally demonstrate that visitors to science centers and museums have significantly greater science literacy than do comparable individuals who do not visit science museums. In fact, the evidence that my colleagues and I have collected suggests that science centers and museums are arguably the single greatest societal contributors to the public's long-term interest and participation in science, greater than books, greater than television, greater than the internet, and even greater than schooling. As this research suggests, science centers and museums in India have and continue to make enormous contributions to the popularization of science in the country. And again, it is worthwhile restating, in no small measure, this contribution is due to the vision and tireless efforts of Dr. Ghosh and his successors at the National Council of Science Museums. More recently, at the invitation of Mr. Rutella, it was my pleasure to spend a month at the National Council on Science Museums headquarters in Calcutta, where my wife and colleague, Dr. Lynn Derrickine, and I helped to teach a graduate course on evaluation and assessment. And as part of that effort, we also conducted workshops, as was mentioned in the introduction, in Delhi, as well as Mumbai and Mysore. It was such a joy to meet and support the next generation of Indian Science Museum professionals, many of whom I remain in contact with nearly a decade later now. Over these many years, it has been truly wonderful and inspiring to see the continued growth and development of the Science Center and museum movement in India. I have taken great joy in being able to witness the ever-growing number of centers and to observe firsthand the excitement, inspiration, and knowledge these amazing institutions generate in their millions of visitors every year. On a personal note, I was born at a fortunate time. Over the course of my professional career, I've been able to witness firsthand the growth and development of the International Science Center and Museum movement. I came of age as the Science Center movement in particular was first beginning here in India, in the United States, and in Canada. And as a graduate student at the University of California, Berkeley, in the 1960s, I began my professional career working at one of these first of these new generation science centers, the Lawrence Hall of Science. Now there are hundreds upon hundreds of science centers worldwide, including many dozens here in India alone. But the movement began in just a few places, including here in India. And over my nearly 50-year career, it has truly been an honor to have played a very small role in this movement, as well as helping to better understand how and why and where people learn science over their lifetime. In other words, their free choice science learning. And I hope through my ongoing relationship with organizations like the National Council of Science Museums and individuals like Mr. Kumar, like Drs. Veena Gopal and Dr. Naqvi, and dozens of other Indian Science Museum professionals here in India, I will be able to continue for many more years to support and learn from the work here in India, as well as continue to support public understanding and popularization of science in India generally, and India's science centers and museums specifically. I've had the privilege over the last couple years with funding from the U.S. National Science Foundation to host two international conferences centered in South and Southeast Asia, trying to again promote the popularization of science, which again, Mr. Kumar, SM Kumar, has been an active participant in those meetings. And I believe that the activities that we've been involved in are in fact making a difference to advancing the idea that learning doesn't just take place in school, but takes place over an entire lifetime, and particularly is supported and influenced by the work of individuals like yourselves working in the Science Center and Science Museum community. So again, I want to thank you for inviting me to speak. Congratulations to Dr. Ghosh for his long and distinguished career, and a heartfelt thanks and congratulations to the National Council of Science Museums for the important work you do every day for the children and for the citizens of India and for the people of the world. Thank you. Namaste.
Thanks a lot, Dr. John Falk, not only for giving a lecture, but also for contributing to the Science Center and Science Museum movement of India. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
So we come to the end of this today's session, and I would like to thank our colleagues from the National National Center for Science Communicators. We have with us Dr. A.P. Jayaraman with us. Dr. Jayaraman, sir.
He's not there.
Yeah.
Suhas Naik.
Mr. Suhas Naik Satam.
He just.
Yeah, he's just.
I saw him.
So we thank the colleagues from all over the India and all over the world for this first session of this international conference on science museum and science center movement in India. I thank especially the colleagues from various parts of the world, especially Dr. John Falk, who's, I think it's very early for him, Dr. Moshe Rishpan, Marilyn Hoyt, Dr. Hinz, and other colleagues who are there. Moshe. Dr. Moshe, yeah. Dr. Moshe Rishpan is there, I think. Yeah. So, and I also thank National Center for Science Communicators for being part of this international conference and collaborating with National Council of Science Museums. Thank you very much. And we will join tomorrow, which will be, the session will be conducted from Nehru Science Center, Mumbai.
9:45 time.
From 9:45 a.m. Thank you very much.